Hey everyone, my name is Scott, better known as Narebo, and today I am going to draw a very complicated airline livery. This is the new United Airlines livery, and it was a lot more difficult than I was expecting it was going to be, primarily because of this part right here, which is the globe graphic on the tail section. Anyway, what I'm doing now, I've taken a photo that I found on airliners.net, just any photo that I could find that was, fairly high resolution and a fairly straight side-on profile. And I am in Adobe Illustrator right now, just trying to block out all of the main elements of this globe. And one thing I discovered when I was illustrating this, the person or people who originally drew this globe, they did not do it in 3D. I mean, it wasn't like they took a 3D rendering of a simplified globe and then traced over it, because in actuality, when I was drawing it out, I can see that it's not an actual globe. I mean, it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, you can kind of see what's happening here, is that if you trace all the elements, it's not perfectly spherical, I should say. Anyway, long story short, that was kind of the problem. I thought I could just maybe do a 3D globe in Maya or Form Z or something and then trace it, but then it didn't really work out that way. So what I had to do is I had to trace the actual logo itself, which ended up taking a long time. And I've sped this up about 1,000%. No joke, no exaggeration. This is sped up 1,000%. And the process of tracing this globe took about, it was about an hour or so of just going in and then drawing and trimming lines. So very tedious work. I was not a happy camper as I was going through this because I didn't think it was going to take so long, but sometimes that's what you got to do. And, I even if I could find a vector version of this on the internet, which I could, by the way, there are vector versions out there for free, none of them are accurate. So keep that in mind as you're looking for free graphics and illustrations, which you shouldn't be using anyway because there are a lot of copyright issues, and it's always better to do your own graphics and illustrations anyway. So definitely create your own. If you ever do this new United livery, you're going to be in pain for a while as you do it because it's extremely tedious. It's a really painful process. I'm having flashbacks now as I'm rewatching this and seeing all the stuff that I had to do. So much trimming and so much cutting. And I will say too, I'm not a complete expert in Adobe Illustrator. I am pretty dangerous though. I know what I'm doing, and I can do pretty much anything that I want to do to a point. But still, this was very challenging, and I know it would have gone a lot faster if I knew a little bit more about Adobe Illustrator and some advanced masking and blocking techniques. I'm sure that there are Adobe Illustrator whizzes out there who could bang this out in 5 minutes, maybe, I don't know. But it took me about an hour, and it was a lot of work. And what you see now is I've got basically everything all built. And I'm looking at what I've got built already, and I'm realizing that I can just combine some of these shapes. So that was what that pause was there. I was realizing, you know what, I can just take what I have and then just combine them, and that'll automatically create the connections so I don't have to go into every point individually and recreate those, that was the bulk of the time. It wasn't so hard to actually draw the globe. All the time that was spent was going into these individual points and connecting them, which I knew there had to be a better way. So as you see here, I've made that realization that just combining shapes is indeed the faster way to go. And I'm just going around and doing final connections to some of those outlying points. And I've got the main parts that I need, and I'm going to make a quick few adjustments here, and then I'm just going to combine everything. You'll see here. A few more tweaks. And I got it. That was so fast. And again, this is 1,000% of the normal speed, so you may miss some things. And again, as always, if you have any questions about how I did this, do leave them down in the comment section below. I'm fairly responsive to comments. I'm not in there every day, but I do check back every few days or so. Yeah, I try to at least. So yeah, making progress. I am almost done here. It was such a good feeling to know that I had this, and I do believe I've got it. There it is. And yeah, it looks like I've got a few more connections to make at that top section. Going to make those. And is that it? Yep, that's it. And as you can see, it's not an actual globe. It was just kind of a weird, I don't know, just a weird illustration that somebody did. I mean, it looks fine on the tail, but it's not a perfect globe. So anyway, now I'm moving on to something which is much easier, which is the titles, the block titles, the United font. I have no idea what that font is. It's probably a custom font anyway, so it's simple enough for me just to trace it in Adobe Illustrator and create vector versions of those. Very simple. This only took maybe 10 minutes max. Not even that. I mean, everything was very straightforward. It's not a very complex font, very simple. And now I am going into Adobe Photoshop, and I'm copying and pasting things that I did from Illustrator directly into Photoshop. You can see that globe graphic is the vector graphic that I created. And I'm starting to block that into my Photoshop PSD template. By the way, if you want these templates, I've got them all available for free, at least the JPEG versions. Go to my website, norrebo.com, and you can get this template along with maybe about 130 more that I have. I think I've got about 130 so far. So yeah, just go and get those, and you can draw you can draw as much as you want. And be the airline livery designer that you've always wanted to be. So yeah, once I got the final globe graphic finished, the rest of the new United livery isn't all that difficult. It's just a matter of blocking in some color on the winglets, on the split scimitar winglets there, and then on the engines. Fairly straightforward, nothing overly complex. I've already got all the details built into my templates, so I didn't have to build anything else. Now I'm just adding some reflection and some gloss on that engine, which may not be totally realistic, but if you've been watching my illustrations or my demos so far, you know that I like to over-exaggerate things and add bling whenever I can. So now I am back in Adobe Illustrator. I am blocking out that arc, or that, I don't know what you call that swoopy cut line that cuts through the center of the fuselage there. And I'm not tracing it this time. I'm just eyeballing it because it's a simple enough shape, and it wasn't required to trace it. So now I'm back in Photoshop. I pasted in that graphic, and what you don't see is that I've realized that I've made that forward section too tall, and I don't realize it yet, but I'm still going in and I'm trimming out all the pieces, adding the proper color. And yeah, I still don't see that I've made that forward section too small. I'm going to go back in and fix that later, or coming up here really quick. But what I'm doing is I'm essentially using that shape that I created in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm using it as a mask. And I just select that shape here in Adobe Photoshop, and I just apply color over top of it. And then to get that transparency, or to get the shadows to come through over underneath or through it, I just use a multiplier blending mode on that layer, and all the shadows and everything come through from underneath. So yeah, it's coming along nicely now, and at this point I realized that I forgot to do that cutout at the top of the vertical stabilizer there, and I drew a shape in Adobe Illustrator to get that curve, or that arc, and I just pasted it back into Photoshop so I can use that as a mask to trim it out. You can see exactly that's what I'm doing here. So that's good. And yes, now I am back in Adobe Illustrator, fixing that mistake that I made earlier. I brought down the top section of that forward arc underneath the titles there. I moved it down quite a bit. And, you know, sometimes that's what you got to do. You don't even realize your mistake until you're actually looking at the final illustration when it's done, and you realize, oh, I messed up, and I got to go back and I got to do that part all over again. It happens more often than I care to admit, but you know, that's just the way it goes. When you're doing these kinds of illustrations, or any kind of illustrations in general, you could tweak forever, and nothing is ever perfect. And even with this illustration, I can see that there's a lot that I'd like to go back and redo. But at some point, you just got to call it done and move on. So I'm stealing graphics from other illustrations that I've done. More specifically, the registration numbers and the numbers for the landing gear flap there, and all that ETOPS information may not be totally accurate, but when you do these illustrations and you zoom out far enough, or you post these on Instagram or whatever, it all looks good. I mean, you can't read that text anyway, so you just gotta keep pushing forward and do something that looks close enough. And now it is my favorite part, doing the gloss. And if you've been watching my illustrations in the past, you know that this is how I do it. I create the shape of the reflection in Adobe Illustrator, and again, I just paste that into Photoshop and use that as a mask to create the two sections, which is the lower section of the dark gradient and then the glossy highlight on top. Nothing fancy. And then adding in some final details here, getting the size of those titles correct. And I do believe that is the final livery. So actually, I really like this livery, and I didn't realize it until I was actually doing this. Oh, I made a mistake. I forgot about this. I needed to take out those eyebrow windows there. But anyway, as I was saying, I really like this livery now, especially after I've illustrated it and I can see it and I can appreciate it. And drawing it myself, I can appreciate it a lot more. So yeah, that looks great. And now it is time to do the background. So I do this a lot actually. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the main logo, which is the globe logo, and I'm using that as just a texture for, well, to be honest, I don't even know what I'm doing yet. I'm just playing with the later styles and the transparency and trying different things just to see what works. And yeah, I think I'm pretty close here. I knew I wanted to make a blue background because that was the predominant color, or that is the predominant color of the new United livery. So I knew that was a very important thing that I needed to do, and I'm almost there. And I'm debating at this point whether or not I'm going to go super dark with it or keep it light like this. Normally I go super dark, but I think I'm liking this, and if memory serves correctly, this is not the final version. I think I add some more darkness to it. But first I got to add the drop shadows and the reflection on the bottom or underneath that main aircraft illustration. So yeah, I'm back to doing more tweaks to the background image there. I just couldn't like that lightness to it, so I've got to get back in there and add a little bit of darkness and some depth that'll help the aircraft actually pop off the background. And yeah, that is much better. I like the way that looks. So there you have it. That is the complete United Airlines new livery illustration. And yeah, it was tough. So again, if you want my templates, you can get them over at my website, norebo.com. But if you want my source files, the PSDs and the vectors, I do sell those as well. And if you want 50% off of those, sign up for my email newsletter. Link in the description below. You can get those. And yeah, have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.